reports that Africans in China were being evicted by their landlords, and racism is what it was attributed to by some who are incensed by that action. But we are now joined by Kavins Adera, who is an international relations student who's usually based in China, more specifically Wuhan, where the COVID-19 pandemic struck hard. He is, however, in the country on a break. And Kavins, you tell us, that is Kavins Adera. I think I mispronounced your second name there at the start. But Kavins, you tell us that may not be the full picture.
Well, thank you very much, Olive, for this opportunity. I think we've followed, like many Kenyans and a lot of people around the world, this news that a section of the African community in China were evicted from their residences. And this has caused a lot of diplomatic furore. We've seen a lot of reactions from different capitals of Africa. We've also seen escalation of this through the African Union, as well as the interaction through the group of African diplomats in Beijing. However, looking at the issues critically, you realize that there could be a mixed story to this whole narrative. To start with, you understand that not just China, but the rest of the world is going through a very difficult situation right now. There is a whole issue of, the pandemic, COVID-19 is ravaging different parts of the world. And as a result, China, which is one of the countries that have been, noted to have taken very drastic measures to contain this epidemic, has scaled up its interventions in terms of trying to stop the second wave of the virus infections. And as a result, there is a requirement from the government there that people should be able to test. And according to sources, some of my colleagues who are in China and friends from China, and the information that has come from the Chinese embassy, there seems to be a mixed reaction, whereas people have apparently been found on the wrong side of the law in terms of testing or new measures that have been taken to contain the disease in China. Okay. However, that does not excuse any act of inhuman or inhumane treatment of any nationality. Any legal measures or security issues that have been raised must be done within the confines of international law and human rights. Okay. And so it's something that is interesting to watch what has been going on. Fine, there have been these issues and we've seen a lot of reactions to them, but I think it is time for us to look at them critically and not just to go by one single story here.
Okay, Kavins, but where do the landlords come in? What do landlords have to do with testing?
No, I think from what I have gathered from different sources is that there is a requirement that people do get testing. And as a matter of fact, I think news which have been on media around the world is that even if you want to get into the cities like Beijing, you have to get a health certificate. Now, to get a health certificate means that you have to go to health authorities for the testing. And to do that, you need documentation, whether you are a Chinese national or a foreigner. But this is the story that we've had from the alternative side. The other side says that a lot of these African citizens have found themselves in the wrong side of the law and have been evicted. So I think what is emerging is that the places where people say without the self-certificate, then it becomes very difficult for you to integrate, because it's also, again, a requirement. And I think this is something that we may not have two ways about, especially measures taken by different countries to contain this pandemic.
Okay, but in your experience as a student, have you experienced racism?
No, I for the time of being in China, I have not experienced any form of racism. Actually, I am right now in Kenya because of what has happened there, which is affecting the whole world. I am a student of international relations, and I have not personally experienced that. None in my circle as students who study with have experienced any form of discrimination that have come to my attention. And I think, however, there are stories that different people, and this is something I think, let's not be too naive again. People have their prejudices, even here in Kenya, in any part of the globe. People do have their prejudices, so some of these prejudices will show up. And especially now, when we have a pandemic or a situation like this, crises tend to escalate prejudices. And therefore, it is not very hard, for instance, to imagine that maybe a section of the Chinese community could have felt in a certain way towards these nationals, this foreign national. Yeah.
All right. Were you in Wuhan at the height of the pandemic?
Yes, I was in Wuhan. I came into the country in early January,
Okay.
just before the city was locked down. Even by the time I was leaving there were all these advisory by the health authorities on what to do. But there was nothing bordering on racism. Actually, the institution where I was very supportive. And I think that what we are seeing is very unfortunate. And if true that certain African nationals or any foreign nationals for that matter experience these forms of kind of antagonism, then it's only proper that we call the authorities in Beijing to do what they can to ensure that everybody in China is treated fairly, just like their authorities have indicated. I think what I may have to say about this problem is that because of the crisis, and because of globalization, which has forced all parts of the world to come together, and so you find many Africans are in China, many Chinese are in Africa. Globalization is something that we may not wish away and we cannot reverse. So another challenge we are dealing with here is infodemics, as you know, that alongside the COVID-19.
Kavins, I'm going to need to cut you short because I need you to answer one more question for me before I let you go. You mentioned support there, saying you got a lot of support from the Chinese government. What of our own embassy? The Kenyan embassy has come under a lot of criticism online for how they've handled Kenyans in China. What was your experience? Were they supportive?
No, I think let me say that I came back to Kenya in the early parts of this pandemic, and therefore I may not have to be very strong in terms of what the embassy either in China or here in Kenya is doing. But I'm aware of some activities that they have taken also just to ensure that the students stay afloat, despite the difficulties that they may go through. And so if there are specific lapses that have happened which have affected my colleagues, and I do talk to them, they have had their fair share of challenges under those conditions of lockdown, just like any other national had. But there was no specific idea that, Kenyan students or Kenyan nationals in Wuhan in particular were subjected to conditions that were unique to them and not to the other nationals as far as I know.
All right. Thank you so much, Kavins. Kavins, they're an international relations PhD student who learns in, or rather goes to school in Wuhan. Thank you very much for speaking to us. He's weighing in on the allegations of racism in China as far as testing is concerned. There were allegations that landlords were evicting Africans. He suggests that it could be because some Africans are there illegally and have failed to comply with the testing requirements because their status would be exposed. All right.